He thought he'd traded up, leaving his pregnant girlfriend for a woman with money and status. But years later, broke and desperate, he walked into a job interview, only to find her sitting behind the desk. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. Where in the world are you watching from? The morning light slipped through the blinds of their one-bedroom apartment like a guilty secret. The kitchen smelled faintly of burnt toast and cheap instant coffee, a scent Emma had grown to associate with both comfort and quiet desperation. She stood at the sink, her fingers raw from the cold water, scrubbing the same mug twice just to stay busy. Behind her, Jordan sat at their wobbly dining table, his head buried in job listings, his jaw tight with frustration. "Any luck?" she asked, trying to sound casual, though the answer was already written on his face. He didn't look up. "They want experience I don't have or degrees I can't afford." Emma nodded, swallowing the ache in her throat. She wiped her hands on a towel that had more holes than thread and crossed the small space between them, pressing a soft kiss to his temple. "We'll figure it out," she whispered. But even she wasn't sure who she was trying to convince. Their life together had started like a wildfire, fast, passionate, all-consuming. But passion didn't pay rent. Love didn't keep the lights on. The bills stacked higher than their dreams now, and every overdue notice felt like a quiet betrayal. Jordan pushed his chair back suddenly, the legs scraping across the tile with a screech that made Emma flinch. "I'm sick of feeling like I'm failing you," he muttered, pacing now. "I worked double shifts at that damn auto shop, and we're still living like this." Emma's voice cracked, but she forced calm. "You're not failing me, Jordan. We knew it wouldn't be easy." He stopped, turned to her, eyes bloodshot and tired. "I can't keep pretending this is normal. I want more for us, for you, for whatever comes next." Her breath caught. She hadn't told him yet. The test, the plus sign, the tiny flutter of life changing everything inside her. "Jordan," she began, but the words tangled with fear. Not yet, not today. He was already drowning, and she wasn't sure if news like this would save them or sink them completely. Emma stared at the tiny white stick on the bathroom counter, her hands trembling so hard she had to grip the edge of the sink just to steady herself. The faint pink line glared back at her like it had been waiting all along, biding its time. She blinked once, then again, hoping absurdly that maybe it would fade, that maybe she had read it wrong. But it stayed, solid, unforgiving. A sharp knock rattled the thin bathroom door. "Em?" Jordan's voice was muffled but close. "You okay?" She opened her mouth to answer, but nothing came. Her throat was dry, her heart a fist pounding against her ribs. She splashed water on her face, trying to hide the evidence of the fear, the tears, the truth. When she stepped out, Jordan was waiting, his hoodie unzipped, still in the grease-stained jeans from the shop. He looked tired. All was tired these days, but his eyes searched her face with concern. "You've been in there forever." Emma held the test behind her back, trying to find the words. I need to talk to you," he frowned. "What's going on?" She didn't sit, couldn't. Her knees felt like glass. She just handed him the test, watched him take it, like it was a foreign object he didn't know how to hold. He stared at it for a long time. Too long. "Is this real?" he asked finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Emma nodded, eyes welling. "I took 2 more. They all said the same thing." Jordan didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, frozen, in a silence that felt like it could swallow her whole. "I know it's not the perfect time," she rushed on, her voice cracking, "but we can make this work. We always said we'd figure things out, together." His jaw clenched. His hands curled around the test until his knuckles turned white. And then he did the one thing she hadn't prepared for. He stepped back. "You should have told me before," he muttered, eyes narrowing. "You should have waited." "I couldn't wait. I needed you to know," she whispered. He turned away, pacing. "I can barely feed us now, Emma. What makes you think we can handle a kid?" Because it's ours, she said, holding back the tears, and that has to mean something. But the silence that followed told her he wasn't so sure. For the next few days, the apartment felt colder, even though the heater clicked on every morning like clockwork. Emma tried to keep things normal. She cooked dinner, cleaned up, laughed at the late-night talk shows with forced cheer. But Jordan had become a ghost inside their tiny home. His eyes never quite met hers. His touches, once instinctive and full of warmth, were now absent. He slept on the far edge of the bed, facing the wall. She told herself it was just the shock. He needed time. This was a lot. But deep down, a knot was forming in her stomach, tight and growing tighter with every passing hour. One evening, she lit a candle, set the table, made his favorite pasta. She wore the soft blue sweater he once said brought out her eyes. She even picked up a slice of store-bought cheesecake, hoping, desperate, for a moment that felt like them. Jordan came in late, the door creaking open just as the food had gone cold. His boots tracked snow onto the floor, and he barely acknowledged her before tossing his jacket onto the couch. "I made dinner," she offered gently, trying to smile. "I'm not hungry," he muttered, brushing past her. Her heart sank. "You haven't eaten all day." He turned then sharply. "I'm fine, Emma." The silence between them felt like it cracked something open. She stood still, her voice trembling. "You don't even talk to me anymore." He ran a hand through his hair, sighing hard. "What do you want me to say? That I'm thrilled? That I'm ready to be a dad when I can't even afford a second pair of work boots? I want you to say we'll figure it out, that you love me, that we're in this together." But he didn't say any of those things. Instead, he looked away, toward the door, the floor, anywhere but at her. "You're not even trying," she whispered, tears stinging her eyes. His voice was low, distant. "Maybe I don't know how." That night he didn't come to bed, and for the first time since they met, Emma didn't feel like she was sharing her life with someone. She felt completely, utterly alone. It started at the garage. Jordan was under the hood of a battered pickup, hands black with grease, sweat dampening the collar of his shirt. When he heard heels, sharp and out of place on the concrete floor, he didn't look up right away. People didn't walk into Harrison's auto wearing perfume that expensive. "I was told you're the best with older engines," a smooth voice said behind him. He straightened slowly, wiping his hands on a rag that only seemed to spread the oil. She stood there like she'd been cut from a fashion magazine and dropped into his world by mistake. Tall, poised, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. Her lips curled into something between a smirk and a challenge. Vanessa. Her car was a vintage European model, impossible to get parts for, worth more than the building it sat in. But it wasn't just the car that caught his attention. It was the way she looked at him, like he was interesting, like he mattered. He told her it would take time, that parts were rare. She just smiled. "Good things usually are," she said, and handed him a business card printed on heavy textured paper. He meant to throw it away. He didn't. She came back 2 days later. No car this time. Just coffee and a curious gaze, asked questions about his work, his dreams. She listened in a way that Emma hadn't lately, at least that's what he told himself. Vanessa made him feel seen, like he was more than just a broke mechanic with oil under his nails, and a baby he wasn't sure he was ready for. "You ever think about leaving this place?" she asked, her voice low, like a secret. He laughed bitterly. "Every damn day." "I could help," she said, brushing invisible lint from his sleeve. "I know people, and I see potential when it's standing right in front of me." Jordan didn't answer, but something in her smile, in the softness of her voice, whispered all the things he'd been dying to hear, things that Emma hadn't said in weeks. He hated that it felt good. He hated himself more for wanting to hear them again. The alarm clock blinked 7:42 a.m. when Emma opened her eyes to the quiet. Too quiet. No clanging dishes from the kitchen, no soft curses from Jordan as he stubbed his toe on the crooked table leg. Just stillness. She sat up slowly, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. The side of the bed where he usually slept was cold. His phone wasn't on the nightstand. His boots weren't by the door. A strange chill crept up her spine. At first, she thought maybe he'd just stepped out for coffee or air. But the longer she looked, the more she noticed. His jacket was gone. The drawer he kept his keys and wallet in hung open, empty. Her heart began to pound as she walked to the kitchen, where the smell of last night's leftovers still lingered. That's where she saw it. A single sheet of lined paper, folded neatly and resting on the counter like a wound left behind. Her name scrawled across the top in Jordan's messy handwriting. She didn't want to open it. Some part of her already knew. Emma, I'm sorry, I can't do this. I thought I could, but I'm not the man you need me to be. I'm tired of pretending I am. You'll be better off without me. Maybe one day you'll understand. Please, don't try to find me. Jordan. Her legs buckled. She sank to the kitchen floor, the letter clutched in trembling hands. The fridge hummed behind her like the world didn't just split in two. He was gone, just gone. No fight, no goodbye, no explanation that didn't sound like a coward's justification. She pressed her hand against her belly, the small swell barely there, but suddenly so heavy. A tear slipped down her cheek, then another. He'd left them, not just her, the child, the future they had dreamed of. The front door never creaked open. His voice never returned. Only the letter remained, one page of words trying to make sense of something senseless. The apartment didn't feel like a home anymore. It was just a box of echoes now. Every creak in the floorboards, every whistle of wind through the cracked window pane felt like him, like a ghost that wouldn't leave. Emma sat on the couch in silence, her knees pulled to her chest. The goodbye letter, crumpled and unreadable, beside her. She had read it so many times it had begun to fade at the edges, as if the words themselves were ashamed. She hadn't moved much in 2 days, just enough to breathe, to shower, to nibble on toast that tasted like paper. Friends had called, she let it ring. Her boss texted about her shifts. She ignored it. Nothing seemed urgent anymore, except the weight pressing down on her ribs, making it hard to take a full breath. But when she threw up in the middle of the night, clutching her stomach on the cold bathroom tile, it wasn't grief that hit her first. It was fear, not for herself, for the life growing inside her. Emma crawled to the mirror. Her reflection looked unfamiliar. Hollow eyes, hair matted from days of not caring. She touched her belly. There was no bump yet, not really. But the knowledge of what was coming pulsed through her like a heartbeat she hadn't earned yet. He had left, just walked out. And now it was just her. The sob came suddenly, sharp and ragged, ripping from her throat like it had been buried too long. She cried until there was nothing left. Until the only thing she could hear was the soft hum of the city outside and the thunder of her own heartbeat. Then she stood, slowly, like a baby deer finding its legs. She walked to the kitchen, dumped the old toast in the trash, and filled a glass of water. She drank it like it was a promise. He didn't get to decide what happened next. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, looked at the calendar, and circled the next doctor's appointment. She'd go, alone if she had to. No one was coming to save her, so she'd save herself. For the baby. For both of them. The years blurred together, stitched by long nights and early mornings, by crying fits and spilled formula, by textbooks stained with coffee and lullabies whispered in the dark. Emma didn't remember the last time she'd had 8 hours of sleep, but she remembered Noah's first laugh, the way his tiny fingers curled around hers like he already knew she was all he had. The apartment was smaller now, just a studio, barely enough room for the crib in the corner and the second-hand futon she called a bed. But it was theirs. She paid rent every month with the tips from the diner, and whatever was left after bills, formula, and diapers, she tucked away like sacred coins. One day, it would be enough for more. On Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays, she wore a white button-up shirt and black pants, that didn't quite fit anymore. She served greasy eggs and watered-down coffee to construction workers and students who never looked her in the eye. She smiled anyway, counted her change twice, and kept the pain in her lower back to herself. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays, after Noah fell asleep in the care of Mrs. Alvarez, the kind old widow next door who'd refused payment, Emma became a student again. She'd sit in the back row of the community college classroom with a half-dead laptop and notebooks filled with neat, cramped handwriting. She studied business, of all things. She didn't know what she'd do with the degree. She just knew she needed one. For herself. For Noah. There were nights she cried in the shower, silent sobs that drowned under the hiss of the water. There were mornings she looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the dark circles, the worry lines, the quiet steel in her eyes. But then Noah would laugh or crawl into her lap with a picture book and a gummy smile, and she'd remember what she was fighting for. She wasn't bitter anymore, not about Jordan, not about the way he disappeared like a bad dream. She didn't have the energy to hate. She had a son to raise, a life to rebuild. And no one, especially not the man who left, was going to stop her from doing either. The baby monitor crackled beside her as the red digits on the microwave clock blinked 3:08 a.m. Emma sat at the tiny kitchen table, her elbows buried in an open textbook, a highlighter clutched in fingers stained with syrup and sanitizer. Her eyes burned, but she kept reading. She had to. Noah had fallen asleep 2 hours ago after a night of teething-induced chaos. Fever, screaming, a diaper blowout that had her scrubbing the sheets in the bathtub with dish soap. The apartment still smelled faintly of menthol and baby powder. She blinked hard, dragging the yellow marker across another line of jargon about supply chains and profit margins. None of it felt real to her, not the numbers or the corporate lingo. But she knew what it meant to budget, to stretch $20 across 4 days, to choose between gas in the car and milk in the fridge. Emma's phone buzzed, a low-balance alert. Again. She turned it over and let the silence reclaim the room. There were moments when the weight threatened to crush her, when the corners of her vision blurred and her chest tightened, and she wondered how many more days she could go without breaking. But then a soft whimper would come through the monitor, and her body would move before her mind caught up. She lived in service of that little boy. Noah was the reason she got up after 3 hours of sleep. He was the reason she worked double shifts and still dragged herself to class. The reason she swallowed pride when customers snapped their fingers at her or when classmates in their pressed hoodies looked at her like she didn't belong. He gave her purpose, and in return, she gave him everything, even when it hurt. Some nights after he'd drifted off to sleep with his hand curled around hers, she'd whisper promises into the dark. That he'd never know the kind of hurt she carried, that he'd never feel unwanted, that she'd build a life where his dreams wouldn't be shackled by survival. She didn't have backup, she didn't have help, but she had grit, and grit was enough to carry them both. The office building stood like a wall of glass and ambition, towering above the cracked sidewalks Emma had grown too familiar with. She adjusted the second-hand blazer over her faded blouse, took a deep breath, and pushed through the heavy glass doors. The lobby smelled like eucalyptus and money. Everyone in the waiting area looked like they'd stepped off a college brochure, fresh-faced, polished, with sleek laptops and resumes printed on thick ivory paper. Emma sat at the edge of a leather chair, clutching a folder she had triple-checked the night before. Her resume was humble but honest. Waitressing, night classes, top scores. A cover letter written at 2 a.m. with Noah asleep beside her. The receptionist called her name, and Emma stood, her knees tight with nerves. As she followed the intern coordinator through sterile white halls, lined with motivational quotes in brushed metal, doubt crept in like smoke. What was she doing here? She was 28, older than every other candidate by at least 5 years. She had a toddler at home and no savings. And this place, This shiny, humming, caffeine-fueled world wasn't built for women like her. It was built for people who hadn't already had to survive something. But when they sat her down across from the panel, when they asked her why she applied, something inside her settled. "I know I don't look like the other applicants," she said, voice steady, "but I've managed a team during the dinner rush on a Friday night, balanced a budget with $10 to spare, and gone from zero business knowledge to a 3.9 GPA while raising a child alone. I don't quit. I adapt, and I learn fast." There was a beat of silence. Then someone at the end of the table, an older woman with silver-rimmed glasses, smiled. Emma left the interview shaking, unsure if it was adrenaline or fear, but something was different this time. She hadn't just survived, she had stood tall. That night, as she warmed a bottle with one hand and read her textbook with the other, her phone buzzed. "Congratulations! You've been selected for the summer internship." Emma stared at the screen, heart pounding. Then she laughed, a quiet, startled, almost disbelieving sound. Hope. Real hope. And it had her name on it. Emma's first day felt like stepping onto a different planet. The building buzzed with a rhythm she wasn't used to. Glass walls, open-concept workstations, people who talked fast and dressed like success was stitched into their blazers. She clutched her employee badge like it might vanish if she loosened her grip, nodding politely as she was introduced to sleek-haired managers and teams with job titles she barely understood. Most of the interns were younger, armed with MBAs or freshly minted degrees. Emma didn't talk much during the orientation. She listened, observed, took notes in her dog-eared notebook while others tapped away on tablets. No one knew she had dropped Noah off at daycare an hour earlier, after scrambling to find a clean shirt that didn't smell like baby wipes. By the end of the week, she'd been assigned to a product development team, a group designing a customer support AI tool. The room was full of code, jargon, and assumptions, lots of assumptions. Emma sat quietly, absorbing everything, until one day someone dismissed a customer pain point as irrelevant. It's not a big deal. No one really notices delays that short. She spoke before she could stop herself. "They notice," she said. The room went still. She continued, her voice steady. "When you've got a toddler crying in the background and you're trying to get a refund before your shift starts, even a 30-second delay feels like forever. And if your system makes people feel ignored, you lose them." There was a pause. Then someone muttered, "Fair point." That afternoon she stayed late, tweaking interface suggestions. By morning, her mock-up had made its way to the CTO's inbox. 2 days later, the CEO himself walked past her desk. "Emma," he said with a slight nod, "you've got good instincts. Let me know if you ever want to pitch ideas directly." She blinked, stunned, then nodded, trying to keep her cool. "Thank you, sir. I'd like that." When she got home, Noah was already asleep on the couch with a book in his lap. She scooped him up, kissed his forehead, and whispered, "We're getting there, baby." She tucked him in, sat down with her laptop, and opened her notes. She wasn't just keeping up, she was rising. The office lights often dimmed around her, but Emma stayed long after the hum of conversations had faded and keyboards had fallen silent. Her desk lamp cast a soft glow over spreadsheets, pitch decks, and user feedback reports she'd printed out to mark up by hand. There was something grounding about pen and paper. It reminded her of the early days, studying between diaper changes and customer complaints at the diner. She wasn't the intern anymore. Now her name showed up on meeting invites. Now, junior analysts came to her for advice. Her ideas didn't just get nodded at, they got implemented. Her salary was modest by tech standards, but it came with health insurance, a steady daycare stipend, and the first real breath of financial air she'd had, well, in her years. At home, Noah was thriving. He was 7 now, bright-eyed and full of questions. He loved science, anything with wheels, and reading books that were too advanced for his age. He asked questions about the stars, about gravity, about where electricity went when you turned off the switch. He also, increasingly, Asked questions Emma didn't have answers for. "Was my dad nice?" he asked one evening, pushing peas around his plate. Emma froze, her fork suspended in midair. "He was someone I loved once," she said carefully, choosing each word like it had weight, "and someone who made a really hard choice." Noah considered that, then nodded like it was enough for now, but she knew more questions would come. Late at night, when Noah was tucked into his bunk bed and the world outside their apartment quieted down, Emma sat by the window, cradling a mug of tea. She wasn't bitter anymore, but sometimes the silence made space for memories to echo. Jordan's absence wasn't a wound anymore. It was a scar, faded but permanent. She looked around their modest two-bedroom, at the crayon drawings on the fridge and the framed certificate from her company's Innovation Award. There was a life here, one she'd built with blistered hands and sleepless nights. She didn't have everything, but she had enough. And enough, when it was born from grit and love, was more than most ever got. Emma rarely had time for news, let alone gossip columns, but sometimes stories had a way of finding her anyway. It was a Monday morning when it first happened. She was sipping burnt break-room coffee and scanning her inbox when a coworker leaned over her shoulder, scrolling through a tabloid headline on her phone. "Crazy, right? Vanessa Caldwell's husband in the news again. Man's got 9 lives." Emma didn't flinch. She didn't have to look. She already knew. Jordan. It had been years, but she would have known his face in any crowd, any photo, any era. There he was, in a tailored suit, hand in hand with Vanessa, stepping out of a limo like life had been handed to him on a velvet platter. Gala lighting made his smile look golden. To anyone else, he looked like a man who had it all. But she remembered the boy who left a crumpled letter on the kitchen counter. The boy who ran instead of rising. The boy who had never seen what he could have had. She didn't say anything to her coworker, just smiled politely and closed the browser on her screen before it could load a similar headline. That night she didn't tell Noah. She didn't let her voice crack. She tucked her son into bed with the same kiss, the same warmth, the same promise that their life was whole, without anyone else's name written into it. Weeks passed, but then came the shift. She was waiting in line at the grocery store, scrolling through the news out of habit, when the headline stopped her breath. Vanessa Caldwell, files for divorce, allegations of infidelity and bankruptcy surface. Emma stared at the screen. Jordan's face looked different this time, less polished, more hollow. There were rumors swirling, business failures, debts Vanessa hadn't known about, his once glowing reputation dimmed by lawsuits and unpaid investors. The perfect house had been sold. The companies he once bragged about, gone. She didn't feel satisfaction, not even pity. Just stillness. The past had a way of circling back like a tide returning to shore. She'd buried her history with him, locked it away beneath years of struggle and strength. But the door had just creaked open again, and she had no idea what might come through. The echo of his own footsteps in the marble foyer used to make Jordan feel powerful. Now it just sounded empty. The house was too quiet, too clean. Vanessa had already cleared out most of her things, her jewelry box gone from the dresser, her perfume no longer haunting the hallway. Even the walls felt bare, like they had turned their backs on him too. All that remained were hollow reminders of a life that looked perfect in photos, but was built on lies, debt, and denial. The last fight had been brutal. Vanessa had stood in the middle of their living room, shaking with a fury he'd never seen before. She'd held up the bank statements, the legal letters, the red notices he'd been hiding. "You lied to me, Jordan, for years." "I was trying to fix it," he'd said, his voice hoarse. "I just needed more time." "You needed a conscience," she snapped, "but instead you gambled everything away, including me." The door slammed behind her that night. She hadn't come back. Calls stopped. Investors backed out. Clients ghosted him. His business partner filed a lawsuit. His name, once polished and paired with words like visionary and self-made, now trended beside fraud and scandal. No one returned his emails. His phone lit up only with final warnings: rent overdue, utilities cut, assets frozen. Friends he once toasted champagne with at rooftop parties now changed numbers or acted like they never knew him at all. He pawned his watch, sold the car. The condo would be next. Jordan sat on the edge of the expensive leather couch, head in his hands, wondering how it had unraveled so fast. But the truth was, it hadn't. It had been unraveling for years. He just hadn't wanted to see it. The empire he built on image and charm had no foundation. And now, with the illusion gone, so was everyone who'd clung to it. He looked around at the empty house, and for the first time in a long while, he thought about Emma, about the life he'd once walked away from, about what it meant to have something real and lose it. This wasn't a fall. This was the crash at the bottom of the very hole he'd dug himself. Jordan scrolled through the listings with a hollow kind of desperation, the kind that made every posting feel like a lifeline and a slap in the face at the same time. Once, his inbox had been flooded with offers, consulting gigs, speaking engagements, business proposals. Now it was nothing but spam and rejections. He sipped burnt coffee from a chipped mug in his dingy sublet apartment, the kind of place he would have mocked not long ago. The floors creaked. The heater rattled. The wallpaper peeled like it was trying to escape. He refreshed the page again. Another listing caught his eye: operations manager for a rising tech startup called Ardent Dynamics. The name meant nothing to him, but the company description was impressive. Rapid growth, clean modern branding, social impact initiatives. He clicked deeper. Founded by a single mother and former intern who rose through the corporate ranks, Ardent Dynamics prides itself on resilience, empathy-driven design, and second chances. Something about those words made his stomach twist. He shook it off. He'd read 100 blurbs today. He skimmed the job requirements. He had the experience, on paper anyway, managing teams, strategy, launches. Sure, most of those titles had been stripped from him, but he could still talk the talk. Maybe this place wouldn't dig too hard into the last year or two. He clicked apply. The resume he uploaded still bore traces of the man he used to be, glossy, confident, inflated in all the right places. He told himself this was just a stepping stone, just until he could rebuild. But he couldn't shake the strange feeling in his chest as he typed up his cover letter. Something in the company's language felt familiar, uncomfortably so. He hit send. Across the city, in an office flooded with warm light and a wall of crayon drawings behind the CEO's desk, Emma skimmed through a new round of applications. Her assistant handed her a folder, unaware of what it contained. Jordan Foster. She froze. The name burned on the page like a match just struck. He had no idea whose door he was knocking on, but soon he would. Jordan hadn't worn a tie in months. The one he threw on for the interview was wrinkled and outdated, a relic from a better life he'd long since lost. His shoes were scuffed, his blazer hung loose on his frame. He'd dropped weight from stress, from shame, from not eating 3 full meals in a day. He looked in the mirror before leaving and barely recognized the man staring back. He arrived at the Ardent Dynamics office 15 minutes early, sitting in the sleek, sunlit lobby with palms slick and knees bouncing. Everything about the space was modern and polished, but not cold. There was something warm here: the soft music, the smiling receptionist, the walls lined with quotes about resilience and rebirth. He didn't fit, but he needed this job. The assistant called his name. "Mr. Foster, we're ready for you." He stood, smoothed his jacket, and followed her down a quiet hallway lined with floor-to-ceiling windows. "Your interviewer will be with you shortly," she said, opening the door to a conference room with glass walls and a large circular table at the center. He stepped inside, alone for a moment, his breath shallow. Then the door opened behind him. He turned, and the air left his lungs. Emma. She stepped in calmly, her heels soft against the floor, a leather folder in one hand. Her hair was pinned neatly, her frame strong, her expression unreadable. But her eyes, Those eyes hit him like a wave. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. She didn't blink. "Hello, Jordan." He felt dizzy. "Emma, what is this?" "I'm the CEO," she said simply, sliding into the seat across from him. "And this is your interview." He sat down slowly, like gravity had tripled. His throat tightened. "I didn't know." "I figured." She opened the folder, revealing his resume. "Let's begin." He swallowed hard, every part of him unraveling. This was not how he imagined they'd meet again, not like this. Not begging for a lifeline from the woman he once left behind in the dark. But here they were. And this time, she held the pen. Jordan couldn't meet her eyes. His gaze bounced between the edge of the table, the folder in her hands, the floor, anywhere but her face. His leg bounced nervously under the table, and he kept shifting in his chair like the cushion had turned to nails. Emma, on the other hand, was still, calm, her posture straight, her voice steady. But inside there was a storm, a tightly held one, silent and churning behind her ribs. She had prepared herself for this moment, the moment she saw his name in the application pile. But now, seeing him in front of her, thinner, older, stripped of that swagger he once wore like armor, she felt a strange mixture of things she couldn't name. She cleared her throat and clicked her pen. "So," she said, voice smooth but clipped, "you're applying for operations manager." Jordan nodded too fast. Yes. "I saw the listing and, your company has a great reputation." Emma raised an eyebrow. "Is that so?" He swallowed hard. "I mean, it's impressive, what you've built, from the ground up." There it was, the pause, the weight behind his words. "What you've built?" He meant without me. She didn't flinch. "Walk me through your recent experience," she said, flipping to a page in his resume. He rubbed the back of his neck. "Honestly, it's been rough. I had some business setbacks, lost a company, things with with Vanessa fell apart." Emma's pen hovered, motionless. "I won't lie," he continued, his voice faltering. "I've made mistakes, a lot of them, but I'm trying to start over." She finally looked at him, really looked at him, and he looked away instantly, the shame plain across his face. The arrogance she remembered was gone, replaced with something quieter, humbled, defeated. "I see," she said, leaning back. "And why Arden? Why this position?" He hesitated, then met her eyes for a second. "Because I want to work somewhere that means something, and because I need a second chance." Her expression didn't change. "Second chances aren't handed out here, Jordan. They're earned." She closed the folder, her voice still unreadable. "We'll be in touch." And with that she stood and walked out, leaving him sitting in the weight of everything he'd once thrown away. He waited 3 days. 3 long, restless days in that peeling apartment, with its leaky faucet and broken blinds, checking his phone every hour like his life depended on it. No calls, no rejection, no offer. Just silence. Until the 4th morning, when a brief email arrived. Interview follow-up. Additional discussion requested. No details, no promises. Just a time, a room number, and her name at the bottom. Jordan sat in the lobby again, this time dressed cleaner, calmer, but still not right. His shoes had been polished with an old toothbrush and dish soap. His shirt ironed with steam from the bathroom sink. He didn't even try to pretend he was who he used to be. They called him back. Emma was already in the room, standing by the window with her arms crossed, staring out at the skyline like it had answers she didn't. She didn't say hello when he entered. She just gestured to the chair. He sat slowly. "Thanks for seeing me again." Emma turned, expression unreadable. "You're persistent." "I'm desperate," he replied honestly, "and I don't expect you to forget everything. I just—" His voice cracked. "I need this." She said nothing, watching him like she was reading something beyond his words. "I know I don't deserve to be here," he continued, his eyes dark with exhaustion. "Not after what I did, not after how I left. But I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking for the chance to prove I'm not that man anymore." Emma didn't flinch. She walked over to the table, opened a folder, and slid a single piece of paper toward him. Entry level, administrative support. A far cry from the management job he'd applied for. The pay was modest. The title, even more so. Jordan stared at it. This is what we're offering, she said calmly. He looked up at her, shame rising in his throat. You don't trust me. She didn't answer. Her silence was sharper than any words, but she didn't take the offer back. And that was louder than any apology he could ever give. The paper trembled slightly in his hands as he read the job description again. Facilities support assistant. That was the sanitized way of saying janitor. Cleaning offices, refilling supply closets, managing trash pickups, and ensuring the building stayed spotless for the very people he once would have brushed past without a second glance. Jordan let the silence stretch as he stared at the words. The bottom of the page listed the hourly wage. It was barely enough to scrape by. No benefits, no title that would impress anyone. Nothing about it said redemption. Everything about it said humiliation. Emma stood a few feet away, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. She didn't look smug. She didn't look angry. She just looked done. Like whatever thread had once connected them had long since snapped, and this was what remained, her offering him a broom instead of revenge. You could have just said no, he muttered, finally setting the paper down. You didn't have to make a point. She tilted her head, calm but firm. This isn't a point. It's a job. His throat tightened. A cleaning job. Her voice didn't waver. Which we need filled. He looked at her, then really looked. There was no cruelty in her expression, no satisfaction in seeing him lowered, just cold, clear-eyed boundaries. This wasn't about punishing him. It was about drawing a line in the sand. You think I deserve this? He asked, not even sure what answer he wanted. I think you said you wanted a second chance, she replied. This is one. The humiliation burned in his chest. But beneath it, deeper than pride, was something else. Truth. He did need a second chance. And beggars didn't get to choose the path they crawled back on. He picked up the offer again, his signature shaky but legible. I'll start Monday, he said, voice low. Emma nodded once. Someone from HR will be in touch. And just like that, she turned and walked away. He stood there alone, holding a contract that felt heavier than any he'd signed in his life. From boardrooms to brooms. But at least this time, he had a place to start. Jordan moved through the hallways like a shadow, present but easily ignored. He learned the rhythm of the building quickly. The morning flood of employees with lattes and Bluetooth headsets, the quiet hum of productivity after 10, the rush to the elevators at 5 when the workday ended and the lights dimmed. His job wasn't hard, but it was humbling. He emptied trash bins from conference rooms where decisions were made, wiped smudges from glass doors that people with titles walked through, cleaned restrooms while junior executives stood at the mirror, fixing their ties, not even acknowledging him. But he didn't complain. He couldn't afford to. Emma rarely spoke to him. She didn't avoid him, but she didn't linger either. She acknowledged him the same way she did the security guards or the mailroom team, a polite nod, a professional hello. It was worse than anger. It was neutrality. But she saw him. He caught her once, standing in the second-floor hallway after hours, quietly watching through the glass as he struggled with a stuck trash cart. He knew she could have walked away. She didn't. She just stood there for a moment, her face unreadable, arms folded, like she was seeing something she hadn't expected. He didn't ask for help, and she didn't offer it. She simply turned and walked back to her office, heels clicking with the confidence of someone who had built her throne with her own 2 hands. Jordan watched her go, a lump rising in his throat. He remembered the Emma he left, soft-spoken, hopeful, tired. The girl who once believed love could conquer everything, even poverty. That girl didn't exist anymore. She was something else now, powerful, graceful, whole. not because of him, but in spite of him. He saw how employees respected her, how they leaned in when she spoke. He saw the quiet authority in her posture, the ease with which she carried a company on her shoulders. She wasn't surviving anymore. She was leading. And Jordan, for the first time in his life, truly understood what he'd walked away from. Not just a woman, a force. It happened on a Tuesday just past 6. The office had thinned out for the day, and the cleaning shift had begun. Jordan moved through the quiet halls with practiced routine, emptying bins, wiping glass, restocking supplies. His movements were mechanical now, muscle memory carved out by weeks of repetition. He didn't notice when the envelope slipped from his pocket. Didn't feel it fall to the floor beside the recycling bin outside the break room. Noah was visiting that day. A half day at school and a promise from Emma that he could tag along if he stayed quiet and brought a book. He wandered the floor with the curiosity only a child could get away with. Employees smiled at him, tousled his hair. Emma trusted him to stay nearby, and he always did. That's when he saw the envelope. Folded, crumpled around the edges, and barely held together by a time-worn crease. His name wasn't on it, but his mother's was. Emma, scrawled in shaky handwriting. He picked it up and looked around. No one nearby, no cameras watching. Just him, a hallway, and a decision. He opened it. Emma, I'm sorry. I can't do this. I thought I could, but I'm not the man you need me to be. I'm tired of pretending I am. You'll be better off without me. Maybe one day you'll understand. Please, don't try to find me. Jordan. Noah's fingers tightened around the paper, his chest filled with something unfamiliar, too big to name, too sharp to ignore. The pieces started connecting in ways he didn't like. The man in the gray janitor uniform who never quite looked him in the eye. The quiet tension in his mother's face every time she passed him. The way her voice softened, but never cracked, when Noah asked about his dad. He folded the letter back slowly, hands trembling. For the first time he saw the man behind the mop bucket, not as a stranger, but as something else. He put the letter in his backpack and didn't say a word, not yet. The apartment was quiet that evening, unusually so. Emma stood at the stove stirring pasta, the smell of garlic and tomato filling the space. Noah sat at the table, his homework untouched, fingers laced tightly in front of him, like he was holding something in. She glanced at him once, twice, then again, finally setting the spoon down and turning off the burner. "Noah?" she asked gently. "Everything okay?" He looked up, eyes darker than usual. Not angry, just older. "Mom," he said, voice low. "That janitor at your office, Jordan." Emma stilled, her breath caught in her chest, but she didn't show it. She walked to the table and sat across from him, folding her hands. The silence between them stretched thin. He reached into his backpack and pulled out the letter, smoothing the creases as if the paper itself needed comforting. "I found this," he said, "today. It had your name on it." Emma's heart sank, but she didn't snatch it away. She didn't scold him for reading it. Instead, she looked at him. Really looked. Her son. Her miracle. No longer a baby. Old enough now to carry questions that had no easy answers. "You read it?" she asked softly. He nodded. Is he my dad?" She exhaled slowly, searching for the right words. Not to protect Jordan, not anymore, but to protect Noah from the bitterness she'd long since buried. "Yes," she said finally, "he is." Noah blinked. His jaw tightened, but he didn't look away. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I was waiting," she said, her voice trembling. "Waiting for the right time. Waiting until you were ready. And maybe I was scared too, scared you'd look at me differently, or that you'd want to find him, and I wouldn't know how to stop you." "I don't want to find him," Noah said. "He's already here, cleaning trash cans." Emma's throat tightened. She reached across the table and took his hand. "I know he left, Noah, but that doesn't mean you have to carry what he did." "I'm not mad," Noah whispered. I thought he'd be someone else." She nodded, blinking back the sting in her eyes. "So did I." And together, in the quiet, they held on to the truth, imperfect but honest. Emma was leaving late again, her heels echoing softly down the polished hallway. Most of the building had emptied hours ago, the lights dimmed to save energy, but the quiet was never unfamiliar. Her days often ended like this: long, quiet walks to the elevator, alone with her thoughts and the weight of what it took to keep everything running. Jordan was waiting near the exit. He didn't say her name at first, just stood there, fidgeting with the hem of his uniform shirt, eyes darting toward the floor. When she approached, he stepped forward, hands open, as if to show he came in peace. "Emma," he said, voice low, rough. She didn't stop walking. "Please," he added, stepping into her path. "Just a minute. I need to say something, not about the job, about everything else." She exhaled and turned slowly, folding her arms. "1 minute." He nodded, swallowing hard. "I know I don't have a right to ask for anything from you, but I need you to hear this. I've been carrying it for a long time, and it's killing me." She didn't respond, didn't move. She just waited. "I was a coward," he said. "You told me you were pregnant, and I ran. I ran because I was scared, because I didn't believe in myself, because I thought leaving would somehow make things easier for you." His voice cracked. "And it didn't. I know that now." Emma's face was unreadable, still, steady. "I see you now," he continued, voice breaking. "What you've built, who you've become, and I see Noah, and I—" He paused, a sob choking his words. "He's everything I don't deserve to know." His eyes glistened, shoulders trembling. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "for everything, for the way I left, for not being there, for not becoming the man you believed I could be." Emma looked at him for a long moment. Her silence didn't carry cruelty, it carried restraint, boundaries. "You're not the man I needed back then," she said quietly, "and I'm not the woman who needs saving now." He nodded, tears falling freely. She walked past him. She didn't look back. And this time, he didn't expect her to. The meeting wasn't planned. Emma hadn't arranged it, and Jordan hadn't asked for it. It happened because sometimes life decided the moment for you. It was a Saturday, the office closed, but Emma had stopped by to pick up a binder she left behind. Noah came with her, curious as always, and a little restless after being cooped up all week with homework and routines. He'd grown so much, taller, sharper, more observant than any 12-year-old had a right to be. Jordan was mopping the lobby floor when the elevator doors opened. He looked up at the sound of footsteps and froze when he saw the boy beside her. Noah noticed the man instantly. His expression didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. Emma hesitated, then stepped forward. "Noah," she said softly, "this is Jordan." There was a pause, just a breath's length, but it felt like a lifetime. Jordan set the mop aside, wiping his hands on his shirt, suddenly unsure of everything. Noah looked at him, not with anger, not with hate, but with the unsettling calm of someone who had already made peace with the truth. "I know who you are," he said. Jordan nodded slowly, voice gravelly. "I figured you might." They stood in the silence for a moment, Jordan searching for something to say, Noah already knowing there was nothing he needed to hear. "I'm glad you're okay," Jordan said. "You've got a smart look in your eyes. You look happy." "I am," Noah said, almost too easily. Jordan tried to smile. "That's good. That's really good." Noah tilted his head slightly. "You're not what I thought you'd be." Jordan's face fell. "I'm not what anyone thought I'd be." Another silence, and then Noah said it, flat, honest, with no cruelty. "You're just someone I used to hear about." Jordan's breath caught, and before he could respond, Noah turned to his mother. "Can we go now?" Emma gave Jordan one last look, not cold, not cruel, just final, and nodded. "Yeah, let's go." Jordan stood there as they walked away. He didn't follow, didn't call out, just let the weight of his own choices settle into the floor beneath his feet. The sun was setting when Jordan found her again, outside the office this time, on the building's back patio where employees sometimes went to think or breathe. Emma stood with her arms resting on the railing, her eyes fixed on the horizon like she was daring the sky to shift for her. He approached quietly, cautiously. "Can I talk to you?" She didn't turn, but she didn't tell him to leave either. He took that as permission and stepped beside her, leaving a respectful distance. "Noah," he started, then stopped. "He was right, wasn't he?" Emma's gaze didn't move. "About what?" "That I'm just someone he used to hear about." Her silence was its own kind of answer. "I'm not asking for anything," Jordan said quickly. "Not a role in his life. Not yours. I just—" He exhaled, voice raw. "I want to be someone different. Someone better than I was." Emma finally looked at him. Her eyes weren't cold. They were calm, anchored. "You say that, Jordan, but you don't just get to want change. You have to do it every day, especially when no one's watching." "I know." "No," she said, her voice firmer than any now. "You think you know, but change isn't about grand gestures or breaking down in hallways. It's in the quiet work, in consistency, in showing up long after the apology is forgotten." Jordan's shoulders slumped. "I want to earn back your trust." "You can't," she said plainly. "Not yet. Maybe not ever." His breath hitched. She saw it, but she didn't soften. "I've forgiven you," she continued, "because I had to, for Noah, for myself. But forgiveness isn't an invitation back into my life. It's me letting go of the weight. That doesn't mean I forget what you did or who you were when you left." Jordan looked down at his hands, weathered now from labor, not luxury. "So what now?" Emma straightened. "Now you prove who you are, not for me, not for him, for you." And then she walked away, not angry, not emotional, just sure. Jordan stayed behind, staring at the place where she'd stood, realizing that trust wasn't something he could ask for. It was something he had to build from the ground up, brick by brick. Step by silent step, Jordan stopped trying to be noticed. There was no one to impress anymore, no eyes to charm, no titles to flash, no room where his name opened doors. What he had now were mop buckets, loose screws in conference room chairs, jammed copy machines, and flickering lights in the stairwell that no one bothered to report, things too small for praise, too easy to overlook. And yet, he fixed them, quietly, consistently. He learned the rhythm of the office, not just the shifts, but the people. He learned who left their lunch in the fridge too long, who always forgot their badge and had to be buzzed in. He learned which hallways got too cold from the faulty vents and how to tighten the bolts on the coffee machine to stop the leak that annoyed everyone but no one reported. He never interrupted meetings. He waited for rooms to empty. He didn't speak unless spoken to. And slowly the sideways glances faded. People began greeting him, a nod, a small smile, a thank you. He swept, he cleaned, he listened. And he started paying attention to the way people treated the quiet ones, the delivery drivers, the custodial staff, the mailroom team. He watched how Emma always said thank you, always made eye contact, always treated everyone like they mattered. He noticed, too, the way Noah sometimes stopped by after school, backpack slung over one shoulder, his gaze steady but unreadable. They didn't talk. Not yet. But when Noah dropped his pencil in the hallway one afternoon and Jordan bent to hand it back, the boy said, "Thanks," without looking away. It was small, but it meant something. Jordan started writing things down, notes, lists, things he didn't know but wanted to understand. He stayed late sometimes to read books he borrowed from the building's break-room shelf. He learned how to repair the elevator's glitchy panel without calling maintenance. He fixed a broken window latch that had let in the cold for weeks. No one asked. He just did it. There was no applause, no promotion. But each day he left the building feeling like maybe, for the first time in his life, he was finally building something real, quiet, steady, humble. The office buzzed with its usual weekday energy, emails flying, phones ringing, the scent of too strong coffee lingering in the air. Jordan moved through it all like he always did, quietly, efficiently, without expecting to be seen. He was replacing ceiling tiles that morning, stained from a leaky HVAC system no one else had bothered to report, when he heard his name over the intercom. "Jordan Foster, please report to the third-floor conference room." He froze. His first thought was that he'd messed up. Maybe someone complained. Maybe Emma had decided this was as far as his redemption would go. He wiped his hands on a rag, nerves buzzing, and made his way to the elevator. The conference room was empty, except for Emma. She stood near the window, arms crossed, her posture unreadable. He stepped in, the door clicking shut behind him. "You wanted to see me?" he asked, voice cautious. Emma turned, holding a thin folder. "I did." He waited, braced. Instead, she walked forward and handed him the file. He opened it slowly, eyes scanning the words. Facilities coordinator, full-time. Benefits, a raise. Not huge, but significant. Enough to breathe a little easier, enough to matter. His brow furrowed, and he looked up. "I don't understand." Emma's voice was calm, measured. "You've been showing up, doing more than what's asked. You fix things most people don't even notice. You don't cut corners, you don't complain. I didn't expect this." "I know," she said. "That's why you're getting it." He stood there, the paper trembling slightly in his hands. It wasn't pity. He could feel that in her tone, in the way she held his gaze. Steady, but not soft. This wasn't about making amends. It wasn't about the past. It was about who he'd become. "You earned this, Jordan," she said. "Not with words, with work." He swallowed hard, emotion rising in his throat. "Thank you," he managed. She nodded once. "Keep showing up? That's all I ask." And for the first time in years, Jordan didn't feel like a ghost trying to outrun the man he used to be. He felt real, and he felt seen. The building was quiet, the kind of quiet that came after hours, when the hum of computers had stilled and the fluorescent lights had gone dark, leaving only the soft amber glow of the city pressing in through the windows. Emma sat alone in the break room, her coffee cold in her hands, the weight of another long day resting between her shoulder blades. She didn't hear Jordan come in. He stood in the doorway for a moment, unsure if he should speak. Then, as if pulled by something heavier than choice, he stepped inside. "I thought you'd be gone by now," he said softly. Emma looked up, not startled, just aware. "Could say the same to you." He gave a small, tired smile and walked over, leaving enough space between them to respect the air that still hung fragile with their history. "I won't take much of your time," he said. I've been carrying something." She waited. Not encouraging, but not stopping him either. "I still love you," he said. The words came out raw, unpolished. "I don't expect anything from that. I just needed you to know." Emma looked at him for a long time. He looked different now, not just older, but honest. The kind of honest that came after ruin. The kind of man he could have been years ago, if fear hadn't gotten the better of him. Her voice was soft. "I loved you too. So much it hurt." He swallowed. "Then why does this feel like goodbye?" She gave him a sad smile, the kind that knew more than words could say. "Because I loved who you were supposed to become." The silence that followed was full of things they couldn't take back. She reached for her bag and stood, her eyes kind but resolute. "I'm proud of who you're becoming now," she said. "But the version of me who waited, she doesn't live here anymore." Jordan didn't follow her as she walked past him. He didn't plead. He just let the door close behind her and stood there in the quiet she left behind, not unloved, but released. The auditorium buzzed with applause as Noah stepped onto the stage, his tie slightly crooked, hands tucked nervously in his blazer pockets. He looked out at the sea of faces, then down at the certificate he had just been handed, the Arden Futures Scholarship, his name printed in bold across the bottom. Emma stood in the front row, pride radiating from her like sunlight. She clapped with the crowd, but her eyes never left her son. He had earned every bit of this, every late night spent studying, every science fair, every moment he chose resilience over resentment, She had saved for this moment quietly, steadily, building the scholarship program in Arden's early years with the dream of making sure her son, and kids like him, would never have to start from nothing. In the back of the room, just beyond the glow of the stage lights, Jordan stood in the shadows. He hadn't planned to come. He had no right to be here. But when the company-wide invitation landed in his inbox, he couldn't bring himself to delete it. He told himself he just wanted to see the scholarship program he'd helped paint walls for, run wires, underfloors for. But when he saw Noah's name on the event flyer, he knew exactly why he was going. From his place at the edge of the crowd, Jordan watched the boy he never raised walk across the stage, chin high, eyes focused. He clapped softly, unnoticed, just one of many. Emma joined Noah as he stepped down, slipping an arm around his shoulders. They laughed about something, inside, effortless. They looked like they belonged together, a family built from ashes, stitched with grit and time and forgiveness. Jordan didn't approach them. He didn't need to. As they walked toward the exit, Emma glanced back once. Their eyes met. There was no anger, no sadness, just closure. She gave him a small nod, one final silent acknowledgement, and then she turned away, hand resting on Noah's shoulder, the two of them disappearing into the light of a life Jordan would never reclaim. She didn't look back again. She didn't have to. She was already free,